We are joined by a former federal prosecutor, Joyce Vance, and historian, Doug Brinkley. Joyce, your view on the law and what today means.
So I know that for many people, Ari, today was disappointing, that they had expected more justice when it came to Donald Trump. And I appreciate that, and in some ways I share that view. But I'm beginning to develop a much more optimistic outlook. I'm beginning to look at today as a real low in our country's history. The incoming president has just been sentenced. He is a convicted felon. He will be a convicted felon when he is sworn in. And despite the incredible power that he will hold, in a Manhattan courtroom, a judge and prosecutors stood up and held him accountable nonetheless. It may not be a full measure of justice, but it is accountability. They stuck it out. They made sure that the jury's verdict, that the conviction stuck. That was not always a preordained conclusion. And Judge Merchan took deliberate, clear steps to make sure that the Supreme Court would rule the way that they did. This discharge that many people are up in arms about, that permitted Trump to walk out of court or to at least walk off of the Zoom, a free man with no further obligation to the court, that was what caused the Supreme Court to render this very narrow 5-4 decision. This tells us the rule of law can still work. It's fractured. It is under attack. It is going to be a tough 4 years, but we are Americans and we can do it.
And you draw an important point about the Supreme Court, which, as I reported, has ruled in ways that were beneficial to Trump, but very clearly in the ruling you cite last night, rejected what was his first big ask of his coming second term. And that's striking. Doug, first draft of history, we all know that phrase. Here's some of the headlines. The Journal, a more conservative-leaning outlet in its editorial, says Trump, first former president, sentenced for felony. Wire Service, Reuters, Trump avoids jail at hush money sentencing. Our colleagues here at NBC, Trump sentenced to a penalty-free unconditional discharge in the hush money case. All of these statements are true. Headlines can matter. I don't know if you know this, Doug. Not everyone finishes every article or every book. So you can see already there the splintering of what today is. And Joyce just gave us a legal view. Your view of today, and if you would oblige, what history might, in decades to come, look back on today as.
Well, you're going to be able to call Donald Trump a felon-in-chief, not just a commander-in-chief. We've never had a sitting president or ex-president be convicted of a felony, let alone 34 felony counts. I think the good news is that the Supreme Court acted in mature fashion by and large, 5-4, is trying to show that there's some accountability to Donald Trump's antics. And it's a stain on Trump's legacy. There's no question from a historical point of view, because it permanently puts the name Stormy Daniels into the mix of history, not as a tangential issue, but as a very real one. It connects him forever with business, the lack of ethics in business. It also, I think is helps that our jury system works. I mean, we ask a lot of jurors. They unanimously made a verdict, and at least they know that the Supreme Court is telling them that they got their backs, those jurors, that they weren't wasting weeks and months being, terrorized in some cases by MAGA people. So this is not good for Donald Trump's biography, not good in a big sense for the country writ large. This is drug on and on and on and on. But it does seem like some justice prevailed. One wishes President Trump would have had some community service or something that could have been more of a penalty in that regard. There's no real punishment, but he's been stigmatized for the ages starting today. Those 6 minutes of Donald Trump from Mar-a-Lago will live on in eternity.
Joyce, the justice system is supposed to have a punishment function. We've heard about that. Often a deterrence function. That might not always be the case, but it's one of the pillars. And then underneath all that is the truth-seeking function. Moments ago, President Biden responded to Mark Zuckerberg folding, gutting fact checks because Trump wanted it, and saying the truth matters. And we all know how that's been under assault. I want to put the Enterprises chart back up on the screen that we showed, because these stamps, underneath each stamp is an entire case, like the ones you tried, prosecuted, or oversaw in your role, where the defendant has rights, the defendant gets potentially exculpatory evidence, the defendant gets the benefit of having the entire burden of the case on the government and a jury of their peers. And if one or two of them don't buy it with reasonable doubt, they walk. What does it tell you that from the top, the convicted stamp, as I said, separate from punishment or deterrence, but the convicted stamp on felon Trump today and all the people beneath him across those different enterprises, some of whom did do jail time, what does that tell us going forward about the evidence here for Americans who are still interested in what I call the truth-seeking function?
You know, Donald Trump, even in court today, was trying to relitigate the jury's verdict against him, calling it lawfare. But the reality of the way our system of justice works is that when there are disputed facts, we let juries decide what the truth is. Prosecutors conduct extensive investigations. They compile the evidence. That's played out for the jury in court, and then the jury decides. The jury in Manhattan spoke about Donald Trump. Other juries have spoken as to others of the people that are associated with him. Some of them have pled guilty. And as you say, Ari, one of the most important purposes of the criminal justice system is that truth-telling function, because we need to know. In a case that's a local matter, a burglary, a bank robbery, an assault, it's important for people to understand what happened. When it's our country that's under attack, that's important. That's why we're still talking about release of the January 6th report, the classified documents report that retailed the investigation that Jack Smith has done. This case in Manhattan is unique, and you and I have had this conversation from the start. This was a case that preceded Trump's election. It's the origin story of his presidency, an origin that began in crime. The presidency proceeded as it began. The truth still matters.